What's up, gangsters? I am here with a finished project to show you guys. I don't know what your favorite parts of model making are, but I can tell you that my single most favorite part is finishing one. I love it. It's not. I don't love it so much that I rush at all costs to get to the finish. I actually fight that because I'm so anxious to see how it's going to turn out. But nonetheless, I really, that's the thing to me. I have pictures in my head for months sometimes of things that I want to accomplish at the finishing stages, and sometimes it gets stressful because I want to get to that point so bad and see if I can pull it off. But nonetheless, I'm finally here at that point with the kit maker network project that I did in building the Dragon 132nd bf-109-e4, which, if you've kept up with any of my videos, you know I've done a pretty exhaustive build review of the whole thing. And it actually wasn't even supposed to go to a finished and painted project, but I kind of fell in love with it, and it kind of took on a life of its own. So here it is. I've finished it, and I want to show you what I accomplished. So let's check it out.
The battle will be over.
There will be no more.
The battle will be over.
There will be no more.
The battle will be
There
over.
will be no more.
The battle will be over. The battle will be
There
over.
will be no more.
The battle will be
There
over.
will be no more.
The battle will be over.
There will be no more.
The battle will be over. Finally, brother, after a while, the battle will be over. For that day when we shall lay down our burden and study war no more. Finally, brother, after a while, the battle will be over.
Okay, so let's talk about this kit. Well, let's talk about the results a little bit. As I said, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the kit itself because I have spent a large number of hours already talking about the kit, as you know if you've watched any of those videos. But what I want to talk about is how this thing finished out. So where to start? I guess really maybe the best place to start is with the paint and the weathering. This was a combination of Tamiya and Model Master Acryl for a couple of simple reasons. The Model Master Acryl because they already had a good Dunkelgrün color, which is right here, that I didn't have to mix, and I have plenty of experience with Model Master Acryl. And I've made it work pretty well for me, but I honestly believe that this will be the last time that I use it as an exterior color. And that part of the reason for that is because this project was my first real experience with using Tamiya as an exterior color. And that came in the form of the black green. Oh, I also used Model Master Acryl for the light blue on the sides of the fuselage and the bottom. And then this green, which I wanted to be a slightly off color because it's supposed to be applied in the field, was actually Tamiya German Field Gray, which is not very gray in my opinion, but it worked really good for this, I thought. Anyway, point being that the Tamiya just worked fantastically. And I have experience with Acryl that is not good with using chipping fluids, which is a real bummer because they have good colors and I like the paint itself, but Tamiya works really good with chipping fluid, and it goes on beautifully, especially when you use Mr. Leveling Thinner. So I'm going to be using Tamiya probably for most of my exterior work from now on. The stuff is just really fantastic, and I always want to go with the best. I'll probably continue to use acryl for small parts and interior, where the color's right and it's simple. I don't have to thin it. It works good for stuff like that. Now, another reason that I really liked the Tamiya is because I did the black basing technique on this project, which, if you guys are not familiar with that, you should look at Doog's Models website. He's got a good article, or look at his YouTube channel. He's got a good video about black basing. But basically, it involves a lot of very small spraying in very random patterns. And the challenge in doing that with acrylic paints is that they tend to spider badly if they're too thin, which they need to be to spray small very effectively. And I've tinkered with different ratios and different pressures, and just, like a lot of other guys, have not had real good luck getting it to work spraying like that. But the Tamiya stuff, man, it was like magic. It sprayed small very well, and I did it straight out of the bottle for the most part. I find that slightly thicker paint actually gives me more control when I'm trying to spray small. And that's the way that I did the modeling. The modeling is paint that's straight out of the bottle and sprayed at like 15 psi, and just working it in as small an area as I could. I did that with my Iwata Neo. And, if I had some spidering, which I did in a couple of places, then I just dealt with it immediately. That, sometimes goes okay, and sometimes not so well. And by deal with it immediately, what I mean is I basically just wipe it off with my finger right quick. And sometimes that works fine. It's gross, and I would never do it on something that wasn't going to have a lot of weathering, because I know that I can always come up with some way to hide it if it turns out bad. And in this case, what I did was I created some spots that I intended to look like repairs, overpaint. And those, you can see those kind of right here on the sides of the fuselage, where I have a couple of sort of square patches of light blue. That happened because I had a little more overspray with this German field gray on the modeling than I really wanted. And so I came back in between the models to clean it up with some of the light blue, and it worked okay until, of course, I had a spider, which happened to me here and here. So there you go, a little impromptu fixing. Over here, I did a paint patch that was intentional. And again, I used the off green to make that stand out. So, I dig it. I think it looks pretty cool. This bird was supposed to be war-weary and tired and beat up, and so I think a few paint patches make sense. I also very consciously sprayed around the insignia with the models, again, to make it look like it was applied in the field and not very perfect, as a lot of modeling was on German aircraft. In fact, sometimes it was done with mops and brooms. Whatever those guys could find was what they used. So I feel like it came out pretty well. There's no such thing as correct modeling, but it's pretty easy to make it look wrong. So that's kind of the overall scheme. Of course, I did my usual with the decals of applying them straight to the paint, and that's where I did the beginning of all of my weathering stages, which was all of the acrylic stuff, where I did some fading and some sponge work with light grays and things like that directly on the acrylic. Then I put a coat of all-clad aqua gloss over it just to seal everything in and give it a really durable finish, even though that might be sort of overkill. And then I came on top of the all-clad aqua gloss and sprayed a layer of Tester's dull coat which is a lacquer, and in my opinion is the best dull coat out there. It doesn't give you a chalky appearance, and it's a really forgiving finish. Goes on really smooth, especially when you thin it. I thin it about 50% with Mr. Leveling Thinner, and just comes out really, really nice. Then on top of that, I did oil weathering and pastels, a little bit more sponge work. I mean, for me, it's just a continuing process until I feel right about it. And sometimes that means, rubbing it off with steel wool and redoing it, just different things. For pigments, I like the Ammo pigments. I also used Ammo panel line washes on this one, which I really love because you can get them in shades of your base colors, which I was able to do with both of these greens. And I like that because it gives you a slightly darker but colored panel line as opposed to just a black panel line. And I think that looks a lot more realistic. The chipping I felt like came out pretty good here on the wing root, and the way that I did that was I actually applied chipping fluid, or not chipping fluid, sorry, I did not use chipping fluid on this one. I used liquid frisket, masking fluid, and laid down the pattern with a small sponge after spraying on a base coat of Vallejo metal color white aluminum. And I'm pretty happy with the way it came out. I feel like it gave a really nice random chipped look, but let me control the pattern the way that I wanted to show it on the pilot side of the wing root, and then over here on this side where I did, where the armorers, ground crew guys are always stomping around on there. I also tried to make sure and weather, these wing walk decals and things like that to make sure that everything was consistent. I did a lot of weathering on the insignia to make sure that they looked nice and dirty and faded. I even used a little bit of sandpaper on them, just, again, to give them that worn look. That's, pretty normal for me. I try to duplicate natural processes of abrasion and things as much as possible. The yellow on the cowling, I should mention, is Model Master Acryl Insignia Yellow with a lot of oil dot work and some where are the words and some pastels for the powder burns, just to give it a little bit of a little bit of that look right there. The last thing that I did on the weathering was the exhaust stains. And I do those last for a couple of reasons. One is because they actually, kind of are the newest part of the weathering on any of these aircraft. But also because once everything is sealed in, if it doesn't go well, I at least have some chance of removing it and redoing it. Fortunately, it went really well for me. I airbrushed these on freehand using Tamiya Smoke straight out of the bottle. Worked really good, gave me a nice controlled pattern. But the one thing about Tamiya Smoke is it's a gloss finish. And so I came back with some Model Master Acryl Flat and, dulled that down. And the reason that I used Model Master Acryl Flat on that, and I also applied it on the top of the fuselage spine, is because it does tend to give you a chalky appearance because of the chalk that's in there to make it dull. And I kind of wanted that to give a little bit more of an ashy look to the exhaust stains and also to show a little bit more fading along the fuselage spine. So just kind of taking advantage of what is sometimes not a desirable characteristic of that product. Now, you can see on the other side, here's where I kind of went for broke. The story on this aircraft is that it broke a piston on one of the right-hand rear cylinders and started belching oil. Now, this is something that, believe it or not, I've actually had happen to me. Not in an aircraft, thank goodness. But it is possible to break a piston and have the engine continue turning, and thereby you start pumping oil from the crankcase out through the exhaust valves. And so what I wanted to show was how that was blowing out on the wing and is still pretty fresh. And so what I did is I used, again, Tamiya smoke, but this time I didn't put any dull on it. I left it shiny, as fresh oil would be. And what I did is I just put some on the tip of a paintbrush and held it right here, and then just blew that off of the brush with my with air from my airbrush. And that was a big risk, because in a way this is kind of the focal point of the story here, and there's lots of ways that could have gone wrong. So I feel like I achieved a fairly realistic look with that, and maybe I got away with one, I don't know, but I'm happy with it. The prop. I talked about bending the prop in another one of the videos, so I'm not going to go over that, but I feel like I achieved a pretty realistic look with that. The chipping worked out really well. This was a series of steps where I primed it, then I painted it with the Vallejo metal color aluminum, then gave it a coat of all-clad aqua gloss to make sure that I didn't chip through all the way to the base color or the plastic even. Then I went on with, actually, in this case, I think I used acryl. Because acryl flat black is truly flat, and there definitely seems to be a correlation between how flat a paint is and how well chipping fluid works. And I believe that that's because it's a function of how well the water that you use to reactivate the chipping fluid can penetrate that finish. And obviously a flat finish is more porous than a glossier finish. And some of these Model Master acryl colors, like this light blue in particular, they go down with a kind of a semi-gloss, and they skin over, and that's why I feel like that the chipping fluid just won't penetrate. But with the flat black, it worked beautifully, and I'm really happy with the chipping effect that I got there. I feel like it's pretty realistic, and I did a lot of then other steps on the prop. You can see where I've done some sponge work, and I came back with steel wool, did a little bit of buffing to knock some of that paint off and show some abrasion. The sponge work gives me a little bit of texture and tonal variation there, which is really prominent with an old prop, but it can be difficult to recreate. So that was good fun. I think I may have mentioned this on one of the other videos. I did some detail work on the engine. Not a ton of it, and I skipped some things I probably should have done, but I wanted to do just the basic large bits of plumbing, like these oil lines, which I did with lead wire. And then I also, over here, I did some wiring with whatever this gizmo is. Up here on the front and along the engine cradles there. So again, just enough to create some visual interest, because this thing was always going to be displayed with the cowling off. Then let's see. Okay, since I'm kind of moving into stuff I did in the build that's sort of out of the box, let's see, the guns. Okay, the guns were pretty nicely detailed, from the box, but really at 1/32 with the guns fully displayed like this, I think you got to go with Master barrels. They're just amazing. Their brass barrels with separate cooling jackets are just ridiculously cool. So I installed those, and then I painted these with Vallejo metal color gunmetal, and then did a wash of black Winsor Newton Indian ink, and feel like I got a pretty nice effect there. I also did the antenna wire. You can see this is a little bit hard for the camera to focus on, but I tried to incorporate this cone-shaped gizmo that these planes seem to always have. And that was kind of tricky, but I feel like I pulled it off. What I did is I took a piece of styrene rod that was about the right size and drilled a hole in the middle of it. And then I chopped about an inch long piece of it off and chucked it up in my Proxxon rotary drill, and then basically just spun it up and held it against a piece of sandpaper and sanded it down to this cone shape. So then I had the tip of the little rod with a cone shape and a hole drilled in it, and I just chopped it off to the right length and threaded it on my easy line. I also made a sort of a, I don't know if this will focus here or not. Let's see if I can put my finger there and make it where it'll show up right. There we go. I made a little bit of a clevis for the rear attachment point of the antenna wire out of some 10 thousandths silver artist wire that bends pretty easily. I drilled a hole crossways through that little thin thing there and formed the triangle with tweezers. Now, that's not entirely accurate. It's actually a sort of a little sheet metal clevis thing on the real plane, but I didn't feel like I could recreate that successfully, and this looked cool, so I went with that. Now, one thing about EasyLine, I learned a lesson. I have used EasyLine a lot, but it's all been on 1/48 scale. And it's perfect for that, but it's damn near invisible, and I just instinctively thought it was going to be too thin for 1/32. And so I went ahead and ordered some of the heavier EasyLine, which is like 20 thousandths thick. But it's weird because it's not actually a thread. It's more of a really tiny ribbon. And you have to stretch it quite a bit to get rid of that look. And also, it is pretty big. I mean, unstretched, it was too big for this scale antenna line. And I found that when I stretched it enough to make it work and attached it to the mast, the first time I did it, it broke the mast off. And even after I got it super glued on there, it was bending it noticeably. So I bailed on that and went back to the finer size EasyLine, and I just didn't stretch it very much, and that gave it a nice thickness. And actually, I think it's perfect. And I did the lead wire here. This is called a random RF radio antenna, and this thing here is sort of called the lead wire, and it's got a kind of an insulator thing in it. You'll see this in a lot of pictures of these aircraft. So I just drilled a hole, and after I put the thread through there loosely, I just filled it with some Vallejo water-based putty and smoothed it all off until I just had that little round-looking thing there to, you can see there, give me the look of the insulator. So, lots of little details and gizmos that I think, add up to a nice result. The last thing to talk about is the grass mat, which is a new product that I've just tried, and I've actually just done a review video on that, which I think is really cool. This is from a company called Model Scene, which is model-scene.com, soon to be distributed, I believe, by Matt Bull at Hobby World USA, and it's amazeballs. I love the realism of this stuff as well as the convenience. This is actually two pieces that I had to cut to get a large enough area for this whole base. And the joint is actually running right through here. And you can't see it because I made a curved joint. I cut a curved edge on one piece, then flipped it over and used that edge to trace it onto the other piece, which I then cut and fit them together kind of like a grassy jigsaw puzzle. And so I really feel like that the grass worked out good. I planted a few little tufts of random dead grass from another supplier just to break things up, and I put a little bit of dirt here where there's been lots of traffic, on and off of the wing there. So that did not come as part of it, but everything else is straight out of the package that you get from Model Scene, and I love it. I'm going to be using this stuff probably every time I want to make one of these simple scenic bases. Okay, what else? Oh, speaking of the grass, here's kind of a funny little story. I wanted to cut the grass down in a couple of places because I wanted, it's pretty stiff, and the aircraft will just sit on top of it if you don't do something about that. So for this whole area that's underneath this part of the fuselage, I wanted to cut it down as flush as I could. Same thing with where this canopy is sitting on it. I didn't want it resting on top of the tufts of grass because that would have just looked silly. So what I did is I got my beard trimmers and used them to basically mow the grass. Well, next day I went to trim my beard, and yeah, beard trimmers ruined. So don't do that. Fortunately, they don't cost a whole lot, and I probably needed a new pair anyway. But lesson learned on beard trimming. So anyway, I think that pretty much covers everything that I've done on this project. Okay, so there you go. There's not a whole lot more to say. This thing has been beat to the ground, I guess, like a dead horse over the course of a bunch of hours of video. And it's really gratifying to finally be done. I feel like that this is probably my best aircraft project yet. I hope you guys agree and you think it's good. If not, tell me about it. Tell me where I screwed up so that I don't do it again. But overall, this has been a lot of fun. I have to say again that I think that this Dragon kit is really a good kit. I would give it overall, on a scale of 1 to 100, I think I'd probably give it like an 88. It has a couple of serious fit issues that keep it from getting into the 90s. And if they solved those, it would be a slam dunk because the detail is so good. And for the most part, the engineering and the fit is really good. Not quite on par with Tamiya, but pretty damn close. So I think it's definitely a great kit. It's undoubtedly the best bf-109-e series kit in 1/32 that's available. So it definitely has that going for it. So I am, it's rare that I will use the phrase highly recommended, but this one definitely is. It's a great kit, and I've had a lot of fun building it, and I hope you guys have enjoyed following along. And I definitely appreciate it if you've stayed with me through the whole thing. All right, guys, take care. Much love.